All right, today I want to welcome Steve Rozenberg. He's a highly accomplished entrepreneur, speaker, life coach, and best-selling author with an international reputation. As a matter of fact, I think he just got back from Germany. As a former real estate investor and commercial airline pilot, Steve leveraged his diverse background to create a successful career in speaking and coaching. Today, he is renowned for his powerful business and organizational strategies, which have been embraced by audiences across the world. With his engaging and inspirational approach, Steve is empowering individuals and organizations to achieve their fullest potential and reach new heights of success. Steve, welcome.
Thanks, Craig. Appreciate you having me, buddy.
You know, we're going to launch off into a more serious tone. A lot of times we just kind of ease into it. We try to introduce the audience. And, I was telling you, I was on a call last night with some COVID survivors. 2 years ago, I was in a coma and they were telling my wife I was going to die. And the call last night was really hard. There were people typing in the chat, "I don't want to hear this. He lived. My loved one died." And Steve, you've suffered loss, devastating loss. Will you tell us about it?
Yeah. Roughly, tomorrow will be the day that it's a 6-month anniversary of losing my son. He was 19 years old. He passed away on a motorcycle, which is sadly what he and I love doing together. And he was struck down, passed away at the scene. And it's tough. It's as a father, as an entrepreneur, as a human, loss is always tough. Loss, and a lot of people say, burying your child should never happen, and I agree. Unfortunately, we had to, my wife and I, and so it's tough. You go through these iterations of shouldn't I have, what could I have done different? I was telling you on the break, my son lived a very, very full life, 19 years old. He'd been to 19 countries. He dove with sharks in the South Pacific. We bungee jumped to New Zealand. And I'm glad that we created a lot of memories with our son, a lifetime. We just, unfortunately didn't know that would end with a knock at the door telling us that our son passed away. So it's very real. And I think, I, as an entrepreneur myself, and I mentor and consult a lot of people, and it's obviously I don't want to say it's their worst nightmare, but it's a very harsh reality when you are trying to build a life and a business and this whole, enigma you're trying to create for your family and loved ones. And for my wife and I, he was our only child. So at some point you're like, okay, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And unfortunately, I was able to build a life and build businesses that gave me the ability to give my son that life of traveling 19 states or 19 countries, all that, because of me being an entrepreneur in a business. What I just pass on to people is those memories are free. Right? Memories that we create, taking your kids to the beach, to the park, to dinner. But as entrepreneurs, sometimes we get so busy being busy that we always say one day. And unfortunately, like my wife and I, we had a knock at the door at 10:30 at night, and that one day was over. So I think it's important that as entrepreneurs, we really put things to, and I'm not just entrepreneurs, but people in general. Loss is always hard. Loss of your son like that, or child in any form, is probably the worst thing you could imagine. People are like, I don't know how you do it. I'm like, I don't know how I not do it. Like, what do? You got to get up. I got to function. My goal now is to show people how to live a life to create memories, because a lot of times as entrepreneurs, and I don't want to get on a soapbox here, but we think we're creating freedom. Right. I consult hundreds of people, and why are you doing this? I want freedom, but you can't quantify freedom. So as an entrepreneur, as a leader, what you're trying to do is you're trying to create something to give you the ability to have freedom, but you can't quantify that. It's the memories that you utilize with that freedom. So what we're really buying is memories. We're not buying freedom. We're not buying time. The only thing that you can take with you is memories. You can't take your money, can't take any belongings. So it put things in a much different light. And I'm just glad that I was able to share my life and help my son have an incredible 19 years.
Well, Steve, I'm just so incredibly sad. I'm very sorry, and appreciate you sharing that here. You know, one of the things that I ran into last night when I was talking to these folks that lost loved ones is, I mean, obviously I can't imagine their pain no more than I can imagine your pain. And some of them, just seem a little bit stuck. And I'm not criticizing these people. They're stuck in their pain.
Yeah. What
would you say to other people who have lost a son? How do you move forward?
Man, I don't think that I could. I'm definitely not someone to give advice because I'm kind of in the heat of it right now, right? The wound is still open. And a lot of people, when he passed away and we got the report, he wasn't speeding. He hadn't drank anything. Nothing was in his system. So there was no one to blame, right? A lot of people want to blame someone. I could blame the person who hit him. Yes, I can. But that doesn't bring him back. And so, and again, this is just how I internalize it. I think that our lives are like books, and our book is made up of chapters, and chapters begin and chapters end. We don't know. You and I don't know. We could get off this call right now and our chapter could be over. We don't know. COVID ended a lot of people. You could say that it was unfair and unjust, and I would agree with that. And I would say the same for my son. But I don't know, maybe he was just destined to be here for a certain amount of time. And I think to myself, as a parent, I always thought that my job was to raise my child, raise our son, teach him right from wrong, do the good things, be out there, be driven, do all the stuff that I do and my wife does. And after he passed away, I kind of thought, you know what? Maybe he was here to teach me a lesson, to relax a little bit. His name is Jet, Jett. And a lot of people, after he passed away, and they saw how he lived, the life he lived, and they're like, man, I wish I could live like Jet. Yeah. Like, I wish I could live that life. And so, I told you we started a foundation for kids who want to go to trade school who can't afford it because he was a welder. And so we called the foundation Live Like Jet, because we're like, that's kind of how he lived. So going back to your question, I think you just have to, at some level, you have to accept the fact that moment in time is gone. And up until, that time, you've got to ask yourself, am I creating the memories that if this were the last day, would I be okay with the memories that I have with my loved ones? Now, again, I can't go back and recreate any memories. I can do stuff in his name and stuff in his honor, but I'll never get that time back with him. So I don't know the answer, because I think everybody grieves differently. And I mean, people come up to me, friends that, 20, 30-year, 40-year friends, and they're like, I don't know what to say. And I'm like, I don't know what to say either, because it's not something that's natural to tell someone, hey, sorry that you had to, bury your son. So I don't know the answer to that. Unfortunately, I wish I did. I wish I knew. I wish there was a magic button, as an airline pilot, entrepreneur, and maybe just a human. I'm very geared to solving problems, right? That's what we do. We solve problems. If I'm a business, I'm consulting a business, I'm solving a problem. As a leader, we solve problems. This is that problem that can never be solved. It's almost like the Groundhog Day. Every day you can't fix it, can't talk to them, can't figure it out. So it's that problem that will forever be unsolved in my brain that I will never be able to fix.
Yeah. After the call, my wife and I were on the call, and my wife was dying. She just, she was like, it just really hurt. It hurt both of us.
Sure.
But after the call, I reached out to a lifetime mentor whose daughter died of COVID 3 days before they put me on the ventilator. And I said, Mike, how do I talk to these people? And, it's something in what you said. My wife and I were processing this. I know I've been given a gift, that God gave me my life. And I need to decide what I'm going to do with that gift. And what I would like to say to other survivors is, it's horrible what you've lost, but you have the gift of life.
Yeah.
What are you going to do with it?
That's just it. And that, I agree. That's kind of why, people see me and on social media and, stuff that I do on stages, and they're like, man, I don't know how you do it. I'm like, you say that like I have a choice. Like,
Yeah.
what am I going to do? I mean, I've got to get up. I've got to be, this is who I am. I'm very authentic. Anyone who knows me, they know my story. I go to events, people come up, they condolences. And it's very thoughtful and it's very nice, but that's part of the grieving process. It's like people want to be angry. And again, sometimes, I think people have that feeling of, again, I rode motorcycles with my son. Then I started thinking, wow, why wasn't I there with him? And then I started thinking, well, is it because I got him a motorcycle? Is it, so you think of all these things and they're probably all right and all wrong at the same time. But the reality is it's not going to change what happened 6 months ago. I can't go back and change it. Obviously, if any of us could, we would. COVID, I mean, that was out of everyone's hands and nothing we could do. My son, I wasn't there. There's nothing I could do. And it's very, very sad. And, but we have to move forward, if anything, for them, for the people that were lost, to go, okay, I'm going to make my life valuable for his sake, at least for my son. I can only speak about him, to show other people how to create a life full of memories for their family and loved ones, so that they don't have that regret saying, man, I wish I would have. And that's talking about solving a problem. That's even worse, because that's guilt on your conscience now that you can never get rid of, but you can change it today. Like I tell people, every day you wake up, you have a decision. You're either going to be better or you're going to be worse than the day before. That's the only decision you have to make when you open your eyes. And if you don't make a decision, you made a decision, and it's normally to be worse. So I tell people, look, you make a decision tomorrow. People are on diets. Oh, I went off my diet, so now I'm going off the rails. Dude, every day you can change how you want to live your life in a second. In a second, you can go, you know what? I'm putting that food down. I'm going to be a leader. I'm going to help people. Whatever it is, it could be a split-second decision that you could change it can reverberate the rest of your life and other people's lives based on every decision you make. And you have the control to do that. You can choose to live your life in the rear view mirror, or you can look out the windshield. They say that's why the rear view mirror is so small and the windshield's so big, and it's just something to think about. It's like, we could live in the past. I get it. But why? I mean, that's normally for dread and anger and hate. Like I said, I could hate the lady who hit him. And obviously, I've never met her. I don't know anything about her. I really don't want to, because it doesn't change the fact that my son is gone. And that's just how I process it. Other people could process things different. That's just how I do it.
Now, one of the things that you said earlier was you used your entrepreneurship to create memories with your son while he was alive.
Yeah.
And I forgot how you worded it, but you said a lot of people get this backwards.
Yeah.
They work. They put work first. Yeah. How did you say it? You said it.
Well, I think the way our brain works and the way we're wired from schooling and stuff is that we have to work hard. So I've got to put in the work before I can enjoy it. I've got to have the meal before I can have the dessert, right? I've got to build this business before I can actually enjoy what the business is going to give me. But is that a rule? Is that a law? Or is that just what we think? And so a lot of people, they say, I'm going to build this business. I'm going to bust my butt. I'm going to work as hard as I can. I'm going to work 18-hour days. I'm going to be very, very proud of that. And one day I'm going to have this business. So there's two problems with that. The first problem is and again, I'll go back when I consult people, when I coach them, my first question is what's the goal of the business? Meaning, what is the date the business is finished? I need a day, I need a month, I need a year. June 1st, 2029, what does this look like? It's not 5 or 10 years. It's not 10 or 20 million in revenue. It's June 1st, 2029. I have a business that's doing 10 million a year in revenue, 35% profit margins, and I'm spending 3 hours a week. Like in flying, that's where we're landing the plane. Now we reverse engineer your life to go, okay, what do we need to do in 5 years? What do we need to do in 3 years? What do we need to do in 1 year? All to get you to land June 1st, 2029. The biggest problem people have is if they're not a $10 million CEO, they don't act like it, talk like it, walk like it, they will never be a $10 million business. If you don't become the person you want to become now mentally, I'm going to spend time with my family. I'm going to be this $10 million CEO when I get there. I've got to, you see, because it goes back to, I've got to do the hard work first before I can actually enjoy the fruits of it. Where's that written? Because again, many people, I know many people, they're like, man, I'm 60 years old and I didn't even do half the things your son did. I'm like, because you got your priorities backwards. I put my priorities to say, I'm going to make sure that I create memories with my family, show my son how, and my wife as well, traveling the world, bought a rental property at 14 years old. I mean, I wanted to show him how to live that life. And it's almost like people have it backwards. And the way I explain it is take that funnel and flip it upside down. And it's just so hard for people to think about that. They're like, I've never even thought about it that way. I'm like, well, you can, it's free. Thinking is free. You just have to change it and you've got to start. And so that, I don't know if that explained it, but that's what I mean by it.
Well, and you know, I think we can apply that to the process of grief as well. Where do you want to be? You know, where do you want to be 2 years from now? And I know somebody that lost their spouse years ago, and emotionally they are still where they were, right after the death. And so whether it's grief or whether it's business, I like what you're saying. Where do you want to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Be specific, and then reverse engineer that.
Yeah, because if you don't, and again, when it comes to being a business owner or a leader, I always tell people, and this is the same with people around you, but I tell people, good employees are not bought, they're taught. People come to work for you for a paycheck. They stay because of the leadership and vision. That leadership and vision is you saying, hey, in 5 years from now, we are going to be a $10 million business. Everyone is going to get a piece of this, or whatever the case may be. But if you don't explain that to your team and you're not being a good leader, they're just there for a paycheck, which means when they get a better paycheck, they're gone. And so what kind of leader are you if you don't see the vision and you're not inspiring and communicating people? Same thing with, hey, look, you know what? I'm going through some shit right now. I'm dealing with my son, but you know what? I'm going to get up every day and I'm going to be the best version I can, not just for me, but for him. And I just think to myself, that's what he would want. That's what I taught him to do. So I'm like, I would be a hypocrite if I didn't do it after he passed. And that, again, that's just me. But that's just how I process this mentally. And it's, again, I tell people, I'm like, and again, anyone who's lost someone, I've lost a brother. That was very, very hard. I lost a parent. That was hard. This is like scorched earth. Like losing a child is like nothing I've ever, it's like half of you is ripped out every day. And so it's very hard to step on that podium and be that leader. But I'm very transparent. People know that I'm very, very raw and I'm very hurting inside, but I do it anyways. And so that's kind of the thing is you still got to do it. You still got to get up. You got to open your eyes and you got to get up. And if what you do is get on that podium and speak and help people, then that's what you got to do. I mean, that's the choice I made. When I fly an airplane, I fly a Boeing 777, 350 passengers on board. I have to have my head right when I'm flying. That's what I do. And so, you know, like I'm focused on that, and I'm a big believer on focusing and finishing, doing one thing at a time and being done with it. And it's hard, man. It's not easy, but you know, I didn't ask for this, but I'm in it, and I'm in the heat of battle with it, and I've got to learn the process.
Well, and let's take that and let's talk about challenges that people run into their business. You know, I'm reading Lee Iacocca's book, his autobiography, and I'm in the section where he's talking about taking over Chrysler, and he found out they inherited something much worse than he thought. And you know, when you were talking about getting up and doing things every day, a lot of what you were saying really resonated. So how do you advise businesses that, you know, 2023 sucks, spending slowed down? What advice do you give them?
Well, I think like anything, you've got to go back to the basics. I think, you know, when you look at professional athletes, Michael Jordan, I would say probably the best athlete on the planet in history. You know what he did every day is he practiced the basics, practiced free throws. He practiced Kobe Bryant. That's what they would do hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. So what business owners are practicing their basics? You know, again, I think a lot of people, you know, the tide was rising and everybody was floating. When the tide goes out, we see who's not wearing clothes. And the people that are not wearing clothes are the ones that never actually built a sustained practical business. They don't know who their target clients are. They don't know what their numbers are, their client acquisition, their lead strategy. They don't have sales scripts. They were just basically order takers. Well, unfortunately, it's a season, right? The ones that were doing good were doing even better. The ones that were doing okay were doing good. But now when the tide goes back the other way, which we all know it does, it's a season, it's a cycle. I think you got to go back to the basics. I think you got to actually say, do I have a sustainable business? And what is the goal of my business? Meaning, I ask people all the time, what is the sale date of your business? And they'll come back every time and they're like, Steve, I don't want to sell my business. I never thought of it. But that wasn't my question. I didn't say, what day are you selling it? I said, what is the sale date? The sale date means that you have a business that is running without you. It's running on processes, procedures, structure, and systems, just like an airline does. So if you don't build it to be completed, it's like building a skyscraper to nowhere. It never ends. And many people, if you can't walk away from your business for 3 hours or 3 days or even 3 weeks without it growing and continuing to be bigger, you don't own a business, you own a job. And a lot of times people call it a business, but it's really not, because it's run on people. And businesses should not be run on people. They should be run on systems and procedures, and the people can just enhance it, but the people don't control it. And if you look at any big successful business, whether it's airlines, McDonald's, any E-Myth, any of these business models, they're all predicated on systems. So if you can systematize it, you can eliminate it, delegate it, outsource it. You can do a lot of things. But look, I was using an example the other day. I said, you know, the airline I fly for, United Airlines, if United Airlines is having a problem and the flight is late, there's no Mr. United, the CEO, coming out and shoving bags into the belly. There's a system for it. And so when you look at any big business, there's, you know, Ford Motor Company, you don't see Ford out on the delivery line when things are going bad or sales are down. He's not on the car lot for Ford and selling cars. There's a system and there's people in the system. So I think for businesses that are hurting, you need to go back to the basics. You need to look at what's called an organization chart and say, do I have marketing? Do I have sales? Do I have operations? Do I have accounting? What are my blind spots? And where's the leak in my funnel? And a lot of people don't do that. And I think that's why we're seeing a lot, and we will continue to see a lot of businesses go out of business because they never took the time to build the right foundation to build their house on.
Yeah. Let me, and that's so incredibly wise. I mean, just, I love it. I love the, you know, the whole, now I'm, you know, I like systems, that's in my wiring, but and I think that's part of the reason my business kept running when I went in the hospital. But I just think that's so powerful for folks listening. Let me ask you this. What's a white knuckle moment where you felt like your leadership was put to the test? You know, something came up, you had to make a decision. It scared you. You weren't sure how it was going to work out.
Sure. Well, I can use an analogy that a lot of people fear and never want to be in, which was having an engine catch on fire on rotation with about 300 people on board, 770,000 pound gross takeoff weight of a Boeing 777. And as we rotated, we lost one engine, caught on fire.
Okay, so hang on. So rotation for non-pilots means what?
When the wheels leave the ground, basically, when we're going down the runway and we rotate for takeoff.
Okay, and this plane has how many engines?
It has two.
And you just lost one.
We just lost one. Now, something to keep in mind, the most critical phase of flight in an airplane when you're flying is losing an engine, having an engine quit on you at rotation, because you're close to the ground, you're slow, and you're heavy. All bad things happen when you're close to the ground. In the air, we can adjust, we can deal with it. Now, it has two engines. It will fly on one engine. It will rotate and it will go. Not as fast, but it will rotate and we can climb out. But a lot of things happen. So there is a process that we are trained for, right? We see the difference between, I'll say, airline pilots and business owners or people in business is that the worst case scenario, which is losing an engine on rotation, we train and practice every 6 months. We're in the simulator and they'll run it back and they'll do it again, run it back, do it again. And then we go through the process. The problem is most business owners know they have engine failures coming and they just hope and pray it never happens, but they never prepare for it. So we prepare for our engine failures and fires. And in business, I prepare people that I work for how to prepare for their own. Most people don't. So anyways, we rotate. And when you have an engine on fire, there's a lot of things going on in the flight deck. And so there's bells, there's whistles, there's lights, things are lighting up like Christmas trees. And, air traffic control wants to know why we have a flame shooting out the back of our engine. And there's just a lot of stuff going on. And there are 4 things, I don't know if I have time, but there's 4 things that we are taught to do to deal in an emergency. 4 things, and we do them and we are pounded in. What would you guess the first thing we do when all this is going on? What would you guess?
Well, I'd want to dump all that fuel, but that's probably not it. What I would guess, assess the situation, slow down and assess the situation.
We take a breath. We just take a breath. Like, okay, what are we actually looking at here? Okay, because there's hydraulic lines shutting down, fuel control switches. There's a lot of stuff going on. But what is the problem? The problem is we have an engine on fire out there. So the next thing we do, so the first thing is take a breath and assess what's going on. That's the first thing. Just calm, everybody just take a breath here. Okay, next thing we do is we establish who's in charge. I'm flying the aircraft. Craig, you tell air traffic control we just lost an engine and we're going straight out. John, you pull out the checklist and start running the checklist. Somebody has to be in charge. If you're asking who's in charge, it's you, and you're probably doing a pretty bad job of it. So now we have to establish roles and responsibilities, right? That's number 2. Who's in charge? What's going on? The third thing we do is we all identify and confirm the problem. Do we all agree we have a left engine on fire? We look at all the indications. We actually look out and we're like, yep, it's definitely on fire. That's left, right? It's not the right. Because your brain, as you know, will play tricks on you. So we all agree, okay, reestablish control. I'm flying. You pull out the engine fire checklist. You get us a place to land. You start dumping fuel. Everybody go. So now you're back into the situation. So now what we do, once we identify and confirm the problem, now we work towards the solution. And that's number 4. And then we land the plane and we deal with it, right? At no point does it say, find out who's at fault, blame the other person, have a temper tantrum, go into a cry. Like, we don't do that. Like, we are working the problem. Look, the NTSB investigation, they will determine what happened and what went wrong. But so many times when there's a problem, everyone's running for cover. It's not my fault. It was him. It was it. And the engine's still on fire and no one is addressing the engine fire. So for me, I would say it was a white knuckle moment, but that's what you're trained for. So we're going through our training and we're just working the problem. Now, when you're actually when the engine is on fire and you're looking at this and you're like, okay, guys, this is a no shit deal here. We gotta get this thing back on the ground. We gotta dump. And when you dump fuel out of an airplane on a plane my size, it can take up to 45 minutes of dumping fuel just to get it. I mean, we hold 235,000 pounds of fuel. So depending on where we're going, it takes a long time to dump that fuel. It's not just to open up the Bombay doors, right? So we are up there dealing with this. We're too heavy to land. We can't even land unless we can't get the fire out. But if we've got the fire contained, now we're working the situation. We're going through our process. So I would say it's a white knuckle moment, but I've also gone through scenarios that I've trained for it. So when it does happen, now it's muscle memory. Now you're just reacting to it. And so I would say that's kind of the difference between pilots dealing with white knuckle and other people who don't prepare. They just hope and pray it never happens. We hope and pray it doesn't happen too, but we know statistically there's going to be something going wrong at some point in my career. Just like something will go wrong, there will be an engine fire in someone's business. They just don't prepare.
That's such a great analogy. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be in Minneapolis tomorrow talking about building systems to monitor and grow their business. I'm probably going to steal something you just laid out there because it's just so incredibly powerful. We could talk hours. I'm convinced of that. But unfortunately, we have to wrap up. And so you were telling me a couple things. You have weekly webinars on how to structure your business. And you also had a course. How do people reach you? And what's a good piece of content for them to engage on?
Yeah, I do weekly webinars, and I talk about how airlines build systems and how you can use those systems in your business. And that's how I help people, and I show them. So I do a free webinar every week. If you go to my website, steverozenberg.com, you can get all the information there. I have video courses. I'm happy to give anyone a free 1 week trial to my video courses. Again, it's all about in-depth training about how the airlines run systems. Because if you look at the systemization of a business, it doesn't get any better than an airline. That's another conversation, but it really is amazing. I mean, I built a multi-million-dollar company, exited and sold it based on my knowledge of being trained by Boeing for the last 25 years of how to build systems based as a pilot. But if anybody, they can go to steverozenberg.com. They can find me on social media. Let me know that they watched me on your show. Happy to give away. I think there needs to be more abundance, and I'm happy to give things away for free because I think there needs to be more memories created. And the only way you can do that is by engaging and being a part of things. And it's just something I believe in. It's something I do.
Well, really appreciate having you here on Leaders and Legacies, Steve. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Craig. Appreciate it.